Hi, this is Royce with Viking Wax Press and the Alternative Football Network. Today, I'm sitting here with my brother Aaron, and we're going to go over our top 20 favorite football cards of all time. The way this will work is I'll start, and then Aaron will talk about his, and so on, starting with 20 and going down. So my 20th favorite card is Ahmad Rashad from 1981. And I like it because he was All-Pro that year. He's got the Vikings helmet, even though they didn't have the logo on the side. Topps didn't have the rights to do that until 1982. You can clearly see that it's still the Vikings. And it was a good year for him. This also was kind of right before he went on to his radio and television career, which on the back of this card, it talks about how he had already started. Ahmad has worked in radio and television. Aaron, tell me about your 20th favorite card.
So my 20th is a personal favorite player of mine, Don Beebe. I like the card because it's got a homemade feel. It looks like, my college of Linfield College with the brick buildings in the background and this action shot and everything. It was also the first year they had college players. Before this, it was just Topps and they never had college players. So this was the first year pro set, and it was kind of a unique thing. Like, oh, wow, he's a college player. He hasn't even played in the NFL yet, and we've got his card. So that was unique at the time. And this was kind of before Junk Wax Pro Set helped usher that in. But I love this card for those reasons. Also, I've met Don Beebe online. We did an online Bible study. And so I have a personal connection with him, and I read his book. So lots of reasons for this one.
Awesome. Okay, now on to my number 19, which is Reggie White, the Minister of Defense. And it's his 1983 Topps USFL card, which was his rookie card, his true rookie card. I love it, first of all, because I love the USFL. I also love Reggie White as a guy, as a man. I admire him. I admire his demeanor, his actions on and off the field. He was tough on the field, but he was a really good guy off the field. So the Showboats also had that classic silver and red look that I kind of wish they would have stuck with when the new iteration of the Showboats came about. Being a Showboats fan, this Reggie White one is way up there for me.
This is Fred Smerlas, another Bill. You're going to see kind of a few 1982 for me because that was the first year of the logo. So it was kind of like, oh, cool, they can have logos on the cards now. And then I love the design. It's kind of a retro design with the little flag, the little pennant. And then Fred Smerlas was one of the first Bills I really loved. Kind of a tough guy, kind of a big burly guy. He was a all-pro nose tackle and, one of their better players. So as a Bills fan, this was one of the cards that cemented my Bills fandom and this year of card too. And then I love the back where they have kind of the, team records info on the right. And then it talks about Fred Smerlas being part of the Bermuda Triangle, which was their tough 3-4 defense.
Okay, moving on to number 18 for me. It was the 1982 Topps Doug Williams, their second 82 card in a row here. But this one, I love it because that Bucco Bruce Buccaneers helmet in the logo on the left bottom corner is awesome. Doug Williams is one of my favorite all-time quarterbacks. He broke a lot of the color barrier in the league as far as quarterbacks go. He was the first quarterback to make it to the Super Bowl as a black man. So he's one of my all-time favorite quarterbacks. And also, one of the reasons I love this card is because during the first year of the USFL, they hadn't made the USFL sets yet. So we had this card in our stacks of USFL players when we'd put them in teams. So we got to look at it all year long. And then I threw in, for honorable mention, his two USFL cards when he played for the Oklahoma Outlaws in 1984 and 85. And now I'm going to go back to Aaron for number 18.
So this is a very good player, but a lot of people don't know him because he played in the older times. This is the 1957 Dick Night Train Lane card. Reason I like this is because it's got the close-up so you know what he looks like, and it's got the kind of faked action shot. They did a lot of these like posed, pretend like you're intercepting a ball kind of things. And then it says end. You don't know offensive end. What is he? He was actually like a cornerback in today's terminology. And he had 14 interceptions in 12 games, which is more than one interception per game his rookie year. So this guy is amazing. He was also a hard hitter. He's an unsung guy that everybody should know, but not everybody does. And I just love the card too and the aesthetics. And then the back's got this crazy cartoon and everything. So I just like the kind of kitschiness of the 50s cards too.
And he was known, and they pretty much outlawed the clothesline hit because of him, right? Okay, my number 17 is Carl Eller, and I love this card for several reasons. First of all, the Vikings are my favorite team. Carl Eller is one of the Purple People Eaters, their renowned defense of the 70s, and this card specifically just shows his toughness. He's got that kind of square slapped-on Band-Aid on his forehead, and he doesn't even care. I like that part of it, but one of the biggest things I wanted to point out about this card that I really appreciate about Carl Eller is on the back you can see he went to college in Minnesota. He lives in Minnesota. He was born in Minnesota and still lives in Minnesota. So his whole life, he's been a Minnesota guy and still part of the community there. I follow him on Facebook, and he's just a really good representative of the team. So, Aaron, number 17?
And I chose a Viking for this card, not for being tough looking like Carl Eller. Look at that Fred Cox. Not imposing at all, but I love the kind of crazy drawn in aesthetics here, and then the airbrushed helmet, and just the kind of close up of him with his single bar helmet. And this one actually says Vikingos because it's the Mexican one. So that year they made a Mexican set as well as a US set. So that's kind of a cool set that people will collect. But this Fred Cox, he's also not well known, but he is actually the Vikings' all-time scoring leader. He invented the Nerf football. So if you've ever played with the Nerf or any Nerf products, you can thank Fred Cox and think of this awesome card here.
Exactly. That's really cool. John Hannah for the Patriots. For me, I love this card for several reasons. It's one of the first ones I remember ever having. We started collecting football cards in 1975. So this set, you'll see a lot of mine are from that era. We've been collecting together since 1974. We started collecting baseball cards, and then 75 we started collecting football cards. So that's almost 50 years we've been collecting cards now together, which is kind of cool. But John Hannah, not only was that one of our favorite cards as far as the offensive linemen go, we'd always pick him when we'd pick teams. He was selected as All-Pro in 74, so the year before this he was All-Pro. Just a really good card, and we used it so much that this is our actual card here on the left. And so I wanted to give a few different looks at cards that are ours from our collection. And as kids, we used to just play with them, literal games where we'd line them up against each other, smash them together. And a few of these cards here are the result. But it was actually, the value on these, probably zero. Nobody would pay for them except for us. They're very sentimental because we truly got use out of them. We played a lot of hours of play with them. So this is a couple Patriots. We've got Otis Sistrunk and Ken Stabler of the Raiders. Those were the great mid-70s Raiders years. They had a lot of good cards. You can see how we kind of taped up Otis here, got ripped in the bottom corner. This next one is Jim Youngblood and Lynn Swann, where Jim Youngblood, we actually had some kind of medical tape where we taped the card back together, and Lynn Swann's missing his bottom left corner. This is his rookie year card too, so
yeah, that'd be a worthwhile card nowadays, but not in this condition.
Yeah, we had zero concept of what cards were actually worth, and we just used them and abused them.
Yeah, I remember our gravel playground with our swing set, and we were out there in the gravel, playing with these cards, and they're on the ground and everything.
Yeah, and we also had dogs growing up that would get a hold of them, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened to poor Lynn, is one of the dogs got the corner of the card. But we'd also stick a big stack of cards in our back pocket and ride our bikes all over the place and, show them to friends and stuff. Here's another strange thing we did. We would cut the top off of cards. I'm not still sure exactly why. Were we giving them haircuts or what were we doing? But for some reason, we have a lot of them that are like this, where we would just cut the top off of the card. Not even very straight or anything, just randomly cut the top off. Otis and Wally are good examples of that. And here's a couple cards, both of the same guy, 2 different years. The one on the right is a 75. The one on the left is a 76 Topps Wonder Bread card. Same picture they used in each, because Topps does that sometimes. You can just see how much we used them. And I'm pretty sure the one on the left, that Cedric Hardman, went through the wash machine at some point. We've had a lot of fun playing football cards over the years, and that's the proof. So now I'm going to move on to Aaron's number 16. This is Aaron's turn.
So this is a newer card. I love this set, this 1997 Upper Deck Legends set, because they have the full color picture on the front of the player in action. And a lot of these cards, we never saw the player in action because all the cards were just a close-up of their face or something. So this shows Jim Marshall in action in the muddy elements of the game. And then they also have a little small picture at the bottom in black and white, which I like too. And then on the back of it, they'll give more information and have kind of a close-up so you know what their face looks like too. And then all of their stats, which I really love. Instead of 1 year, 2 years or whatever, it's got their whole career of stats. So I like this card for a lot of reasons. Also, Jim Marshall was an Ironman. He set the record for most career games and most games in a row. So that stat sheet means a lot to me.
And he was one of the Purple People Eaters as well.
Yep.
I was going to throw that in there for my Vikings. So number 15 for me was Bo Jackson, his rookie year. I actually got to go see Bo Jackson his rookie year. My friend and I went up to Seattle with our dads, and we watched the Raiders play the Seahawks. And Brian Bosworth was super famous at the time. He came out of Oklahoma, and he was like this famous guy guy who was supposed to be really good in the NFL. And then I got to watch Bo Jackson run all over him and pretty much shut him down. So it was great. Bo Jackson was a two-sport guy who played both sports at the top level. And he was just amazing to watch. He would juke people and run over them at the same time. It was just really fun. It's also a design. I really like that 88 Topps card. It's kind of a classic look. They even did a blue back to it. Moving on to Aaron's number 15.
So this is another sentimental card from our childhood. This is Charlie Sanders, 1976. One reason I love it is he's got the full, 70s look. He's got the afro, he's got the Fu Manchu, and I have some earlier cards of his where he's more clean cut, and it's kind of a progression through the years. First, he gets a little bigger hair, and then, he gets the Fu Manchu, and then it gets both, and so it's kind of cool to see his cards from like 72 to 76 and his evolution of his style. But this just is a classic one for me, the 76 set with the little football at the bottom. I don't know why they chose pink for the football, but they did. And then I like the quiz on the back because you're trying to guess who the person is, who's the mystery lion. And if you follow them through, you'll get more clues. So I just thought that was kind of a cool little thing with that set.
Moving on to number 14, I've got Jim Youngblood, Topps Jim Youngblood. This was a classic card. We had, he's the guy you saw the pink tape earlier. That was our actual card, but this one shows it as it was sold. I like this card for a lot of reasons. First of all, my grandparents lived in Long Beach, California, and we would go kind of once every other year to visit them down in Long Beach. And in the mid-70s, the Rams were kind of in a heyday period for them. They were really good. They had some really well-known guys. My grandpa, we call him Gramps, was a huge Rams fan. So we all kind of, through him, liked the Rams as well. In fact, my brother Grady's favorite team at the time was the Rams. So this kind of reminds me of Grady in a lot of ways, similar to his look and stuff. But also, it reminds me of the LA 70s kind of look and feel, where you had guys like Jim Garner, who we knew as Jim Rockford, and then Steve Garvey on the right. Look at those chins. It's just a lineup of chins that are made for Hollywood. That whole era of LA just reminds me of going down to Long Beach to see my grandparents. So it's kind of nostalgic.
My next one is Greg Landry's 78 card. Again, this shows the grit and the muddiness of playing outdoor football. And then Greg Landry, I also like because I love the USFL, and he was one of the older players that came from the NFL to the USFL. He looked like he was 100 years old, but he was probably 36 or something when he played in the USFL. But, we had all of his 70s NFL cards, and then when he got to the USFL, it's like, hey, we know this guy. But I also love that the Topps cards in the 70s weren't overproduced. Somebody just like, okay, pink, why not? What does pink have to do with the Lions? Absolutely nothing. So it's not like the cards from like about 88 on, they were all matching. They were all like well done. So I just like that it's random. It's kind of like somebody just was like, okay, let's do it. And nobody questioned it.
For me, I've got number 13 as Anthony Carter. This is the first year of his cards with the Vikings. He has a couple cards earlier with the Michigan Panthers, but this one is with the Minnesota Vikings, his first card there. And he is sentimentally my favorite wide receiver of all time. I know that there are guys like Justin Jefferson and Randy Moss who played for the Vikings that are technically better, but Anthony Carter will always be my personal favorite because of his USFL years and then straight transition to my favorite team in the NFL. And not only that, he was a really good player.
And I like this football field behind him with the, the yard markers and the green and the white.
I agree. I like the front of the card. I don't like the back of the card because it almost makes me dizzy the way it is offset angles and
all the random people in the background.
It's just not my favorite back of a card, but I do like the front with the green and white football field stripes.
So this is my next card that is a newer card, 1992 Topps Stadium Club, Reggie White. I do love Reggie White, just like Royce was saying earlier, for some of his USFL ties. Also, him and Bruce Smith, I think, are 1A and 1B right there with best defenders of all time. And then this has the USFL card on the back. So it's actually got one of Royce's cards on the back of it. So that was the cool thing about these Stadium Club cards is they had their rookie card on the back of it. So you kind of got two cards in one. I just really like that, yes, it was the new style on the front and it has good action shots, but on the back, a little bit of nostalgia too, which I'm into.
Yep. I like the kind of historical look at that player.
Yep.
So here's Lynn Swann again. This is one of the ones that we have as a roughed up look, but this is his actual card. For me, I had it at number 12. The Steelers of the 70s were a big, my family on my dad's side is from Pittsburgh, so we had a ton of Steelers fans in the family. So so we would root the Steelers on. Lynn Swann and John Stallworth as a tandem of receivers were awesome together. This is his rookie card. Most of the 75 cards weren't in action, even though he's not super active in this one. It's a live shot. He's standing on the field at least. Big nostalgia Steelers mid-70s guy, so Lynn Swann's one of my favorites. He also is one of my favorite announcers of all time. He announced a lot of the USFL games in the 80s. I also do like the backs of these cards, that kind of football look. It reminds me of looking at the electronic football game in a way, but I'll move on to number 12 for Aaron.
So for my number 12, I picked Charlie Taylor out of the Wonder Bread set. This was one of our first sets as well, like we said earlier. And these Wonder Bread cards were just pretty cool looking. They had these clean lines and everything. Most of them were just a headshot, but this one had a helmet on, and it's got the old style 2-bar face mask. It was so popular with quarterbacks and wide receivers back then that, it brings back a lot. And then Charlie Taylor was, the all-time pass catching leader until until Charlie Joyner and then Steve Largent. But this guy I feel like is pretty unsung and pretty unknown as well. But for the day, he was the wide receiver. I like the back too because it's got an actual play. And these were kind of some of the plays like, hey, let's try to run that play with our cards. Hank Stram's favorite plays. So I thought that was kind of cool too. And it would kind of teach us a little bit more about football as we were playing and having fun.
Exactly. Speaking of Steve Largent, my number 11 card is Steve Largent. When we moved to Portland in 1977, the Seahawks had basically just moved there as well to the Northwest. So Seahawks were automatically our regional team that we were kind of inundated with on TV. Like that was pretty much every Sunday. If you're going to catch a game, it was always going to be the Seahawks. And it wasn't a bad thing because back then they had Zorn to Largent connection going on. And Largent was just really amazing to watch on the field. I saw an interview with him where he talked about how he was able to catch so many. And he talked about how a lot of people would tell him to look in the ball as you're catching it, watch the ball. And he taught himself to watch the very tip of the ball to know exactly where to have his hands. And he said that helped him go from like catching 90% of the balls to 98% of the balls. I thought that was a cool thing about Steve Largent. He was always trying to get better. That is why he's one of my favorites.
And then I chose another 97 Upper Deck Legends card from our next one. This is Deacon Jones, who another fierce defender. I actually read his biography called Head Slap. So I really fell in love with him and the Rams and George Allen and all that. This one shows him almost getting to Johnny Unitas. So it's got another legend in the card with Johnny Unitas. And then at the bottom, it's got Deacon Jones for the Chargers. And that Chargers uniform with the white helmets with the yellow bolt on it and everything, that's just a cool look. Everything about this card looks cool. If you see on the back with the stats, it'll actually include some of the sack numbers. And some of his sack numbers were crazy, especially because they didn't play 16 or 17 games back then. So if you look at some of those sack numbers in the 20s, those are in 12 to 14 games. And he was amazing. He was, kind of before his time. And I think he's right there with Bruce and Reggie as best defenders on the line.
Yeah, if somebody got 26 sacks in 14 games right now, it'd be the highest paid player in the league. Okay, my number 10 is Chuck Foreman for the Vikings. This is another Wonder Bread card. Topps made these for Wonder Bread. And not only is Chuck Foreman one of my favorite players, he kind of perfected the spin move. He was the first guy to really do that on a regular basis in the 70s. He was one of the reasons why the Vikings were able to get to 3 different Super Bowls in the 70s. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the fun of procuring these cards, because rarely did we get Wonder Bread, but we would always try to talk Mom into buying a loaf of Wonder Bread just so we could get the card. And you only got 1 card in each loaf. So to try and get the whole set, you'd have to buy a lot of loaves of bread. We ended up with actually quite a few, considering that we weren't like Wonder Bread. I don't know if it was more expensive or what, but for whatever reason, Mom was not always big on getting us Wonder Bread, probably because there's 0 nutritional value in Wonder Bread.
But for us, it was a great marketing play because we're like, we got to get the card. We don't care about the bread, really. We want that card.
Yeah. And it was fun. It was like even more exclusive than opening a pack of cards. You were opening 1 pack of bread to get 1 card. So that was cool. And again, this one has one of Hank Stram's plays. This is the sucker left. So I kind of like the sucker left part of it. Okay, Aaron.
So for my 10th, I chose Albert DeBinion, Golden Wheels from the Bills. This is from the Bills season right after they won the championship. So they won the 65 AFL championship, the last time they have finished their season with a win. I am looking forward to that happening someday. Before my lifetime, they had 2 of these in a row in 64 and 65. And then I just love the old school television look of this, like the wood grain TV with the tube looking old style TV, like, oh, I'm watching color TV and this player's coming right at me. And I chose this one. There's quite a few that I like, Billy Shaw and a few others, but I chose this one because he's kind of like looking like he's just going to come right right at you like he's in his stance and coming towards you. And then this guy's another guy who was really good in his day, but is not too well known. But he was known for his deep ball. He was Jack Kemp's favorite target in the 60s.
Awesome. Okay, moving on to number 9. I've got my 1975 Topps Fran Tarkenton card. I like this one because it's one of the rare in-game looks at action on that year of card. And Fran Tarkenton, along with Alan Page, are my top 2 all-time favorite players. Fran Tarkenton was, as a kid, he was my childhood hero because he would just drive defensives crazy because he would scramble all the time. And like just when they think they had him in his grasp, he would get away. I talked to Randy from the World of Football, who used to go to Detroit Lions games in the mid-70s, and he said Fran Tarkenton was his most hated player because of that very thing. I loved it, though, as a fan of the Vikings. I just loved his ability to get out of trouble in a pinch and just scramble. And then he didn't always run the ball, although he was a great rushing quarterback. A lot of times what he would do is just run around in the backfield until he found somebody open. So even though he had the most rushing yards as a QB, a lot of his rushing actually never made it onto the stat because he was running around for no yards until he threw it for a lot. But he owned the majority of the passing stats when he retired in 78, and you can see a lot of them here on the back of his card. I'm probably going to do another series that includes both him and Alan Page, so we'll look forward to that down the road.
And then my number 9 was another 1975 quarterback. This is Dan Fouts. That 75 set, we just really love the aesthetics of it, the helmet on there, the flag. But Dan Fouts, interestingly enough, was not a star until probably 1979 because he was splitting time with James Harris and a couple other lesser-known guys. Then he kind of burst on the scene and then started setting records with Air Coryell. 3 years in a row, he upped the passing yardage total in 79, 80, and then 81. So Dan Fouts is one of my favorite players of all time. He's from the University of Oregon, where my son went for a little while, and we live in Oregon, so he's kind of local too. I love the airbrush look too on the helmet. Like the Chargers helmet did not look like that, but here it is on the card. I also like that, like you can see if you look down lower, his socks are like taped up. Everything's not quite as manicured as it is nowadays in the NFL. So it was kind of like a little slapdash, a little like thrown together, and I kind of enjoy that.
Awesome. Okay, my number 8 card is the Topps USFL Anthony Carter. This is the year the Michigan Panthers won the USFL championship. It was the first year of the spring league that we were totally into and totally excited for, to be able to watch pro football in the spring. And guys like Anthony Carter, who would have went over the NFL, went to the USFL instead. So they had a lot of different NFL caliber players go to that league. Anthony Carter was by far the most exciting receiver in that league for me to watch. I liked the team. I loved the Panthers colors, and especially that helmet is awesome. And before the Breakers came to Portland in 85, when they became my all-time favorites, Michigan Panthers were right up there just because I love their look of them. And then I like that Bobby Hebert to Anthony Carter connection. He also went on to play for my Vikings, which is another reason why I love Anthony Carter. These cards had a really unique back to them that I'm usually not a fan of, the pink and the baby blue, but it certainly stands out. Like, this is high contrast here that you can see from a ways away, and the clarity on it is good. It's just stark as well. So I can't say I'm a fan, but I appreciate the uniqueness of it. Like no other card had pink and blue.
Yeah, and I like the useful facts at the bottom too. So just a little more info and a little curiosity at the bottom as well.
Exactly.
So my next was also from that set is Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly later played for my Bills, but he was the marquee name that went to the USFL. Instead of signing with the Bills, he was like, I don't want to play up there where it's cold. He signed for the Gamblers, and he broke all kinds of records. That first year especially, he just burst on the scene. He was thrown in that run and shoot offense down there, and he was the marquee name of the USFL, and I believe he won MVP that year. And then he did come to Buffalo and became, our Hall of Fame quarterback, and still lives in Buffalo to this day. So he grew to love Buffalo, even though at first he said he cried when he was drafted by the Bills. So we did watch him play in a game where he just destroyed the Breakers up here in Portland. Yeah. And so I'm really glad that I got to see him in person. And I just love this card for Jim and also for the look of it. And, again, the 2-bar helmet down at the bottom and the cool design.
Yeah, that Gamblers logo is epic too, with the state of Texas and the star right where Houston is.
Yep.
The cool thing about Jim Kelly, his record of yards that year was not broken by anybody until 2011 when Drew Brees broke it. So that 84 through 2011, that's a long time to hold a record of yards in the season. My number 7 is Jim Kelly. Same card. I won't go into too many other details other than I really love that run and shoot offense that he was in. And like I said, breaking that passing record and having it hold for so many years, that was awesome. The run and shoot, Mouse Davis was the offensive coordinator for them that year and just put into place an offense that was instrumental in changing the game of football as we know it today.
And what's funny is Royce and I did our rankings independently of each other, so we didn't know who the other person had picked or what rank. And here we are with two right next to each other.
Yeah, completely separate.
So my number 7 is Coy Bacon. A lot of reasons on this one. He is a USFL guy. He played for the Washington Federals that first year, and nobody knew how old he was. His birth date was not published, so that was kind of this: how old is this guy? Is he in his 40s? What's going on? And then the airbrushed quality of this card is amazing. There's no number on his jersey. It's obviously airbrushed with the colors, the stripes and everything. And then just the pure white helmet just looks kind of funny, like this little ping pong ball on top of his head. But Coy Bacon's another guy, tons of sacks in, a shortened season. I believe he had 26 when he played for the Bengals in 76.
Wow.
So this guy, I think, is also underappreciated. Is one of my favorite positions, the guy that's just going after the quarterback and the tough guys. And Coy Bacon is one of my favorites.
I think it's almost like an oil painting you could put up at the Louvre.
There you go.
I really do like him as a Washington Federal as well. This is one of my favorite all-time pictures of the whole UFL era because he looks so daunting and imposing. And that classic Washington Federals look of 1983 was great. So
USFL, you mean?
What did I say?
UFL. Stop living in today. Go back to the 80s.
They are a spin-off of the USFL, so I'll stick with it. Of the original USFL is what I meant.
Thank you.
Okay, my 6th favorite card is the 79 Walter Payton card. I like this one because even though they airbrushed off the C on the side, you can still see the beating that he took as a running back, just plunging over the offensive line to get the extra yard like he always did. He was amazing on the edges, but he would also go straight ahead a lot. So Walter Payton, along with Herschel Walker, is right up there 1 and 2 for me as far as running backs go all time. He was epic sweetness. And even though he beat up my Vikings a lot, you couldn't help but respect the guy's mentality on the field and his personality off the field. I think he won Sportsman of the Year awards several different times. If I remember
Another Man
correctly.
of the Year is named after him.
Yes.
Payton Man of the Year.
Right. So all around good guy. He will be missed. For sure. Aaron?
My number 6 came from the same set. Again, not planned. This is Steve Largent's 79 card. It's another action card, which again was rare in those days. And I just really love Steve Largent again because he doesn't look like a football player, but he was one of the best. He was a tactician, a technician, and he set tons of records. And just the Seahawks colors and everything go really good with this clean design. I love the little all-pro symbol in the top. And then if we can look at the back, one thing I love about those 70s cards was the little cartoon at the bottom where it always talked about something interesting or whatever on the bottom. And then this was Largent's kind of breakout season where he had 1,100 yards and, he became a legend. When he retired, they actually made a whole set of him, or we made a 30-card set and went through his whole career and everything. So this was kind of the first glimpse of his legendary career.
Awesome. Okay, now we're up to my number 5, Herschel Walker, 1983 Topps USFL. He played for the New Jersey Generals, and he came out of college a year early. He had won the Heisman, but he skipped his senior season to sign with the Generals. The NFL threatened to sue because they were not drafting underclassmen, but he was an underclassman that the USFL we don't have that rule, so we're going to draft him, and they drafted him and signed him. So it was a big, huge deal back then for them to get the guy that won the Heisman, steal him away from the NFL. But not only that, he was amazing on the field. He put up yards like a knife going through butter. He was just amazing. And he went on to also play for the Minnesota Vikings. So one of my all-time favorite running backs ever. And this card is really cool. It just shows him in action in that classic Jersey Generals uniform.
So my next card is Walter Payton as well. This is the 1982 in-action Walter Payton. So they had these in-action cards for a couple players for each team. So instead of a headshot or whatever, they'd show it like this. But I love this because he's doing his famous dive to get in the end zone. And it just looks like he's flying. It looks like he's Superman here. So he's almost completely completely horizontal here, and he's jumping over. And you also get a quick glimpse at the Bucks creamsicle uniforms, which are cool and kind of an 80s icon. So,
and that's probably Leroy Selman there in the middle.
It could be, but I just love everything 80s about this, and then also just kind of typifies Walter Payton and his going all in and doing whatever he can to win.
Awesome. My number 4 is the rookie card of Walter Payton, 1976, because this is such a classic card. I think if it's not on every football card collector's wish list, then they haven't been alive for very long, because it's probably the most coveted card out there as far as on people's wish list of ones they want to get. It's a great card, classic sweetness, and because it's his rookie card and he went on to have such a great career, it's one of my favorite all-time cards. And I do love that 76 set as well. And the backs of the 76 cards, like Aaron talked about earlier, are really, really well done. Crisp and easy to read. Good card.
This one's a sentimental card for me. This is the Immortal Roll set. So this had players that had made the Hall of Fame, and it was published in 75. So we had some of these as kids, and we'd never heard of these guys before. We only knew the current players. So it was kind of like an education through cards. And I picked Don Hutson in particular because this guy is so underappreciated. For his time, he was so head and shoulders above every other receiver. It was mostly a running league. This guy had 1,000 yards receiving. This guy set all the receiving records that weren't broken for long. Like, I think it was either Don Maynard or Raymond Berry, I believe, might have passed some of his records, but he held some of the records from the 40s well into the 50s and 60s. And touchdown catches, I believe, wasn't broken until, I think, Largent. So this guy had tons of records, again, before his time. And then the Immortal Roll, with the little Hall of Fame guy and then the Hall of Fame on the back, just, really got us dreaming about it. And Royce and I were actually able to go to the Hall of Fame last summer. It was kind of a lifelong dream. And this is, I think, kind of where that dream started, is these Immortal Roll cards.
Yes, absolutely. And they were different. Like all the other cards were made by Topps that we were collecting at the time. These were made by Fleer. In fact, I've got one here that I wanted to point out because it was such a wild thing for me to see the Chicago Cardinals when I was used to seeing the Bears. And we didn't have parents that were into sports to give us a sports education, so we had to learn it off cards. So I learned, that before the Cardinals went to St. Louis, they were in Chicago. And so Charlie Trippi in that Immortal Roll set taught me that. So I love that set as well. It was strange, though, because they were a taller card. They were the same width, but they were taller. So it was hard to fit them in a box. Okay, my number 3 card is Otis Sistrunk. This is, classic Otis Sistrunk look. He was the guy that I would least like to meet in a dark alley and make him mad kind of guy. It's just, I almost have to laugh looking at how just awesomely angry he looks and would hate to line up against that guy. Love the card just for the look alone, but not only that, it's a great classic 75 football card and from the great Raiders defense back then too. Also, interesting thing about Otis is that he played in the Continental League for 3 years before he moved over to the NFL, which is strange. So I might have to do one of my football helmet ranking videos on the Continental League if I can find enough helmets.
Yeah, Coy Bacon was in the Continental League too.
Awesome. Okay, you're number 3?
Hey, it's Otis Sistrunk, 1975. Again, we did not collaborate on this. We just independently made our lists, and this happened to be one of both of our favorites. I think because sentimentally, we had this card. You saw the beat up one earlier. This is one of the ones we always chose because he just looks like he could kick your butt. He looks like he's missing a couple teeth in there or something, and he just looks like you don't want to mess with this guy. And the Raiders, silver and black, and they were a great team at that time. So all of that plus the aesthetics of this 75 set with the cool flag, the helmet, and everything. And I just think it's pretty funny that we both came upon this with our number 3 choice.
Totally random, but awesome.
Yep.
For my number 2 card, I've got the 76 Alan Page All-Pro. This is kind of his heyday, was mid-70s. I think they played the Raiders in the Super Bowl that year or the year after, 77. 75, they also went to the Super Bowl. 74, they played the Steelers. So anyway, Purple People Eaters, dominant defense back then. Alan Page was at the very center of them, leading the charge. They had a moniker, meet at the quarterback. And so Purple People Eater team of defenders would all make it their mission to meet at the quarterback and just smash him. I love the era. The cool thing about Alan Page, he grew up in Canton, Ohio. In high school, he actually worked on building the actual Hall of Fame and is now in that Hall of Fame that he built by hand, like helped build by hand. I won't say built it, but
the legend.
He is a legend. Alan Page, right neck and neck with Fran Tarkenton as my favorite player of all time.
My number 2 is one of my favorite players of all time, Steve Tasker. This is another, smallish guy. I could picture myself being him. However, he's fast, he's coordinated, and I'm not. But I love this because he's celebrating. He just knocked somebody's head off or something. He was a special teamer, so that's what he was known for. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. If you're considered the best at a position of all time, I think you should be in. I love this card because of the exuberance and the great picture and everything on the front. I actually had a t-shirt made of this card when I went to my first Bills game in Buffalo. So I wore this under my jersey. If you look at the stats, they aren't overwhelming at all. Hardly any receiving stats at that point in his career. But he'd be double teamed every time on punts and kickoffs, and he would still go down there and tackle the guy. He had a lot of blocked punts. And then he also was the Pro Bowler for a lot of years, and he got Pro Bowl MVP. Just an overachiever, plays with a lot of heart, and I just love how this card shows that.
Yeah, I do remember him leveling people on kickoffs. It was awesome. Okay, my number 1 is Alan Page. This is just the year before that last one, 75. Again, my favorite player on my favorite card of all time. So I couldn't not put this one at the top. I've already kind of covered Alan Page. This is a little bit more of a posed look for Alan Page, not quite as zoomed in, but if I go back to that 76 look, it's pretty similar. I also like how back then the Vikings practiced at Mankato State, and so oftentimes you can see the buildings of the college in the background, not in this one, but it's just that wide open field of their practice field. So a lot of Vikings cards in the 70s, as you look through them, you'll see that Mankato State setting. So Aaron, you're number 1?
My number 1 is a Bill. This is Frank Lewis, 1982 set. So this is the set and probably the card that cemented my Bills fandom. The first time we saw their logo, he was one of the only All-Pros that year. He had 1,244 yards receiving. That number is cemented in my head because of the back of this card. Sentimental reasons, but also the look of this and the All-Pro with all the stars. I just love that heading up there at the top. Makes it all look so retro and so cool. When I think of cool card and favorite card, this card just pops into my brain. So that's why I picked this card, and that's one of the reasons why I love the Bills to this day.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until you picked it as your favorite that he played in the 74 Super Bowl against the Vikings, which is the very first game I ever remember watching and why I became a Vikings fan in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool little piece of history.
Yeah. Before they drafted Stallworth, he was kind of their number 2 receiver. So, and then I also love regional cards. So I wanted to share a couple of these Frank Lewis regional cards. I like obscure and weird stuff sometimes. So on the left, there's a Bell's Market Frank Lewis card from 1980. And they had a lot of players in that set that they didn't have in the top set, like a Jim Richer, things like that. So I collected all of this set so I can have more Bills players with actual produced cards. And then on the right is a Kellogg's Frank Lewis. And the Kellogg's made these in 82, that same year as his All-Pro year. But they'd come in either an individual or in 3 with perforations in between them. So if you go on eBay or something, you can find some of these, and they're just kind of cool and kind of obscure. And they didn't make too many players, so Frank was one of them. So I was kind of proud of that.
Awesome. So we're going to kind of give you a recap. Just a quick look at our top 20. These are my top 20 cards of all time. Some classic looks there. And then here are Aaron's top 20 of all time. He had more like that Albert Dominion, Jim Marshall, and Deacon Jones that you had to turn on the side to see, and Richard Lane too, Dick Lane. Great cards overall. We had fun doing this project.
It was hard to narrow it down to 20, and then it gave me some other ideas of things to do. Like I really love the team leaders cards, so I might do a video on just team leaders cards, or there's so many cool things that they've done with cards throughout the years that this kind of sparked a little imagination of other videos we could make.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've listed about a dozen other videos that are football card related that I want to do now. But if you have any ideas, put them in the comments for us. We might think about them and see if we got some examples we can put out there for you. Overall, though, this has been Royce Waxenfelter and Aaron Waxenfelter. I'm with Viking Wax Press on the Alternative Football Network. God is good, y'all. Take care.